Okay, so here we go. One of the benefits that I've encountered through this whole healing journey would definitely be now that I look for what it is that I'm trying to learn, whatever it be, a situation or a person I encounter, I'm really noticing that almost every single person that I have come across my path, that whether I've met somebody new or somebody that's already in my life, with the things that I've learned, I've noticed that each of them are a reflection of a part of myself that either I used to be conflicted with, or that I've had to face my fears for, or that I really admire, or um, maybe toxic behaviors I used to have. But each significant person, all of them, have kind of given me like an inside view to myself, which makes it a whole lot harder. Maybe in an old job setting or factory setting or whatever. I used to work in a factory, but there would be the occasion where I get caught up with gossip, or if I was pissed off. Normally, myself, I usually only would, talk shit about somebody who directly affected me in some way, and it had to do with the job or something like that. But ultimately, I slowly started to realize that how I was feeling on the inside, how I was dealing with things, whether it be my inner turmoil, whatever you want to call it, insecurities or certain fears and stuff like that, I realized that really each person was there to kind of test me and show me something about myself, whether or not I was ready to learn it at the time, because my ego was still up, my wall was still up, and I was more reluctant back then. But now I'm really, really starting to see that how I was feeling on the inside, whatever was going on internally, is going to be a direct reflection of whatever was going on in my surrounding area, the people I interacted with, how I got along with them, what triggers I was experiencing, or how I was handling things emotionally. And the more you start to learn about yourself, the more you start to admit certain things to yourself or break down that wall and have that sort of ego death. Many people can go through multiple ego deaths, it's not just one. And coming up out of that shows a real strength of a character. Coming up out of that, kind of being like the phoenix, even if you hit one of your lowest points, you make your way through it. Usually you go internally, you go through hermit mode, and you do the reflection and the accountability and taking note of certain things that maybe you can adjust yourself, because that's all you ultimately have control over is yourself. And I've stated this numerous amount of times, but from what I'm seeing, it's fascinating. And it's not with judgment, like a person's less than me, or that they are not equal in some way to me, or that there's something wrong with them. It's more of taking a look at the matter of fact of things, how they're acting, the way they respond, their processing, their thought process, whatever triggers they are willing to acknowledge or not acknowledge, and certain things like that. When I deal with individuals now, especially if I decide to insert myself, because it's not always necessary to take it upon yourself. Depends how big of a heart you have, but you have to be able to draw your boundary lines and not interfere too much with other people's karma. You have to be able to know when speaking up is appropriate and when you're overstepping your boundary lines. And I'll be the first to admit that I've done that before, because I want to help so much, because I want to try to get somebody to see something from my perspective, but it doesn't always work that way. And clearly, if you've been doing your own healing journey, you're well aware that sometimes you have to go through things on your own, and you have to have your own sort of enlightenment and acknowledgement of what is. in order to move past and heal past something. And it takes time, it takes practice. Um, Forgiving yourself is very, very important. Being able to acknowledge that you're a human being acting within the human capabilities, and that there's going to be decisions maybe you made in the past that you don't feel the same about anymore, and you're willing to change that to move forward. And you get a lot of the couples or something like that, or even just people in general, that say, oh, this person wants me to change this, or you want me to change that, or something along the lines of that. But ultimately, it comes down to yourself. Do you wish to change your behavior, or the way you handle certain things, or the way you react to certain things, for your own well being, not for the other person? It may benefit them in the long run, depending on how you're reacting, but ultimately, it comes down to yourself. How do you want to handle the situation? How much have you started healing, and how much do you understand about yourself so that you can understand another person? And it's so easy for me to sit here and preach and make videos and stuff about what I've learned, but I do practice that in my daily living, and I do practice having to ground myself, because sometimes the energies that come in towards me, whether they be my own or other people's, they become overwhelming, and I'm still learning how to fully understand what I need to do for myself in order to get my balance, in order to be grounded again, instead of allowing my emotions to get the best of me, because that happened in the past. And I was considered, you could ask any of the close people that have known me since ever, I was a difficult child, or a difficult teenager, or a difficult young adult to deal with in my karmic state, because I had no tools to regulate myself. I didn't understand that I needed to regulate myself. I didn't understand that I was allowing my emotions to take the wheel and steer. I didn't understand that I was taking on way more than I needed to for myself. And I didn't understand how to go about healing myself in certain ways so that I could live a healthier, happier life. And honestly, it really comes down to knowing that it's up to you to take the first steps and do what you need to do for yourself in order to make those changes, if you want to, because nobody's forcing you. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody's really forcing you. It is free will. You get to decide whether you want to continue and replay the cycles again and again, or if you want to learn from certain situations, change your behavior, take accountability, and move forward. This is not to say that you're a bad person. This is not to say that you're completely in the wrong. This is not to say that the decisions you made weren't valid at the time. This is to say that you want to make changes so that you could be more at peace, so that you can heal and move forward, and not have the same response to something such as a trigger in the future. And even myself is guilty of this. It's a lot of the pointing the fingers, and it's easy to say that, but what did you actually learn from it? If I'm going to call somebody out on something, generally it's going to be because I resonate somewhat with it. So this has to do with me. And if I call somebody out on something in the hopes that I'm helping them try to understand something that I already been through, clearly I'm taking on a part of that burden. That's a choice as well. And it's up to the other person what they're going to do ultimately. And I cannot ever expect another person to think, feel, or act the way I do. But it's easy for us to really point the finger. And in a lot of the videos that I've made in the past, I have pointed fingers at certain people that have maybe done me wrong, or slighted me, or really betrayed me in some way, and took it upon themselves to do certain things that they believed I was deserving of, especially with malintent. And it's easy to point the finger at them, but ultimately, what am I to be learning from this? How am I responding to what other people do? Because I have no control over other people. even if they feel in some way, shape, or form that I deserve some negative punishment or something like that, it really comes down to what I'm supposed to be learning from how I'm responding, what I understand from the situation, how I fully understand myself so I can comprehend why they would do a certain thing so that I can get to the point of forgiveness if ever need be. And that's for me. It may benefit the other person to forgive somebody, but ultimately, when you forgive, it's for yourself. And you have to remember to also forgive yourself too, especially if you had any part in it or just your own response and reaction to it. You're allowed to understand that you've learned something new and you're moving forward in a different light. So I don't know if you resonate with this. I personally have been interacting with different individuals, each with their own, I want to call it drama, but it's not. It's everyday life stuff that's conflicting and a lot of triggers other people have. And I will sit there and listen to what it is they're explaining, and I will see myself in the situation. More than likely, I've already gone through something similar or exactly. And what I'm trying to do would be to pass on advice or a lesson that I've learned in the hopes that they would take it. But you can never expect another person just to take your advice because it's worked for you, because you don't know what works for them. And you can forgive people all you want, but you're allowed to keep your boundaries set for yourself within respect, obviously. And ultimately, that's your choice. Comes down to what you get to decide for yourself. If you have younger children or something like that, that's a whole other deal, because then you're taking on the responsibility of those young people. And that's really, really important too. If you start learning how to regulate yourself, if you start learning how to take care of yourself, ultimately that's going to translate on the outside, externally from you. And it's going to reflect on the people around you, including children. So the more that you heal, the more the children pick up on that, the more they can learn how to regulate, the more they can learn how to understand and manage their emotions, the more they can learn how to differentiate their own energies, what's their responsibility and what's another person's burden, so that they can decide for themselves and discern whether or not they're going to take that on. The more they can make healthier choices for themselves, and the more that they can better be equipped to make decisions when it comes to them getting older. And this is like a healing process. We're all on different levels at different times, on different timelines, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe in. And we're all going through this together as a collective. When we start to learn, the people around us will pick up on that. And when we set healthy boundaries, it's out of respect for ourselves. And hopefully, people around us also pick up on that as well. What they do is still none of your concern. What they're going to react to, if people get upset with you for setting a boundary, let's say, and you want to keep your energy for yourself and they get upset, well, that's a red flag, because that means they've become codependent on your energy. That's not to say that's a bad thing. Being codependent on another person's not a bad thing, but it can be problematic, and it can end up to be severe in some circumstances, and it's something to manage and regulate yourself. If you realize that you're seeking outside of yourself for anything that brings you happiness, or you're seeking that from another person out of stability, then that has become codependency, and it's going to really end you up in a little bit of a tough situation, because then now you're no longer relying on yourself and being self-sufficient to do those things for yourself. You're relying on another person to do it for you. And that's not always fair to the other person, and it's not fair to yourself. So I could sit here and talk, and I can make these videos and share, and you're more than welcome to make comments down below. Keep them clean, like, share, subscribe. But I really truly do believe that the more you learn about yourself, the more you're going to understand other people, the less chaos, the less conflict, the less room for error or misinterpretation or miscommunication, and the more we can work together as a team to learn and grow and develop and become emotionally self-sufficient and regulate and heal as a collective. So if you resonate with this, give a thumbs up. And if not, that's okay too. Have yourself a good day.